From time to time, I'm asked questions concerning morality that go something like this. Do I need to give up my homosexuality in order to become a Christian? Do I need to give up my alcoholism in order to become a Christian? Whatever the issue happens to be, with all due respect, it's simply the wrong question to ask. It proves that a person has yet to understand what Christianity really is. Homosexuality isn't your problem. Not really. Alcoholism isn't your problem. Not really. God with us has been raised from the dead, and in so doing, he has ripped a hole right through everything you once believed. You and everyone else are now on a collision course to meet this one who has conquered death and now owns eternal life. And so your greatest need this morning, my friends, is not to become a card-carrying heterosexual, nor is it to become a teetotaling fundamentalist. Changing your morality is like attempting to upgrade a system that has already been rendered obsolete. If it is true that God with us has been raised from the dead, then something more devastating than the Copernican revolution has occurred to your former way of thinking, and you better come to grips with it, friends, in all of its implications. Everything has changed.
Everything has changed. Now, if you happen to be a feminist who is just flipping by, because feminists don't tend to tune in here on purpose, this is just for you.
Were this story fabricated, you'd be certain that only male witnesses would have been approved, would have appeared. But here these women are appointed by God with us to be the apostles of the apostles. Go tell my brothers. In other words, it's the dawning of a new age of equality in the family of God, where there is no longer Jew or Greek, no longer male or female, no longer bond or free. And what about the apostles? How do they respond to these women? But of course God with us has been raised from the dead. Didn't you believe what he promised? No. The other gospel accounts tell us that none of them believed. Thomas, of course, being the most outspoken of all. My point, simply this. The resurrection of God with us is not a wild hallucination brought about by the extreme enthusiasms of a psychologically weak people who are hoping beyond hope that he would rise from the dead. The fact of the matter is, my friends, never has there been a promise that God's people have been so slow to believe than that of the resurrection of God with us.
Can you trust that event called the resurrection? Yeah, and check this out. A lie actually confirms it.
What triggered the final events of the crucifixion? The priests bribed Judas to betray God with us. What now motivates the lie about the resurrection? Verse 12. And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers. Sound familiar? Verse 13, and said, tell people, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him. Interesting euphemism, don't you think? The implication being that bribery will once again win the day. You've got to be kidding. You really expect me to believe this? For one thing, sleeping on duty is a capital offense for a soldier of Rome. And for another, explain to me how it is that you know exactly what happened if in fact all of you were really sleeping. You see, my dear friends, in all of their desperation, the lie that the priest pays so much money to advance torpedoes their own cause, the first half of it invalidating the second half of it. In their frenzy to cover up the resurrection, they only serve to confirm it.
And please note this, the priest, by not questioning the soldiers about their report, proves it even further.
But did you notice something, dear friends, even more revealing and perhaps even more disturbing? Did you read here? The priests don't even argue with the soldiers regarding the integrity of their story. No word of contradiction. No word of argument. No appeal. Why? They don't care that God with us has been raised from the dead. They just don't want anybody else to know about it. In other words, you understand now, their antagonism toward the resurrection has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with reality. It only has to do, from their perspective, with self-protection.
Artaxerxes preaching on the resurrection, the historical event that you can trust.